have these meetings on the first Monday of the semester, but then that again clashed with the national championship game, so we moved it. So for any TCU fans out there, I'm sorry that we moved it. But the purpose of this evening is just to give you an overview of the process of course registration, which I will do, and then to also let you hear a little bit from each of our 6 department chairs about the particular offerings in their department, what the typical sequence of courses is, the kind of considerations the boys might have as they move through the high school, and what the criteria for some classes are. So it's intended to be a sort of overview at the start, and then all of us will be here for questions at the end if you have those. And if there are questions you have either that aren't answered tonight or that you think of as you're leaving, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be happy to answer them or to meet with you one-on-one depending on particular circumstances. Most of this information, as I mentioned in my email, is geared at parents who haven't gone through the process before. So if you have gone through the process before, a lot of it will sound very familiar, but you may also, of course, have particular questions for the process for your son as well. So, to start with the 2 most important pieces of paper in the entire process, the course selection sheet, which is this grid that is in the back of the course registration booklet that the boys were given yesterday, and then the course recommendation sheet, which is a color-coded sheet. This is the color for the current 9th graders to have. If, and I know this happens only very rarely, your son possibly has misplaced or doesn't have the materials, they can be found also on your smart profile. If you go on the resources, you can find additional copies of these as well. But the basic idea is this sheet is the one that they will be taking to their teachers this week. And on the back, I would think of this sheet as the menu. So this has the listings of all the courses that they can take next year in the various departments. And their current teachers will be initialing their recommendations and suggestions for which classes they might be taking next year. So this is essentially the menu, and then this is the order sheet. The boys and you, in conversation with you and maybe their advisors hopefully as well, will use the courses they've been recommended for to fill out on here what courses they would like to take next year. These are course recommendations, the colored sheet, and then the course selection sheet is this one. Both of these will go together as part of this process. And so the rest of the information I'm going to be giving you is about the things to be considering as you work through this process with your sons or as you talk to his advisor or his teachers about this. First of all, some general nuts and bolts. Make sure your son is signed up for at least 5 classes. They can sign up for either 5 or 6, but they must sign up for 5. And of those 5, at least 4 must have exams. Now, the overwhelming number of classes that we offer do have exams. There are some arts classes that do not have exams, so that's the time to be careful about that. Dr. Fuller would be someone to approach about that if you're not sure. In general, all other classes in other departments will have exams. If you are considering a 6th class, the rule of thumb would be to say a 6th class can be fine, but there needs to be a positive reason for it, rather than simply defaulting into, well, I think I should have a 6th class for the sake of having a 6th class. There are lots of reasons that could work for that, but no one needs a 6th class in any year in order to graduate. So we say this is a kind of definite reason for doing that if you would like to do that, or if your son would like to do that. Secondly, this is important on this one, your son needs your signature, one of your signatures on his course selection sheet before he returns to his advisor. This is to make absolutely sure that you also are approving the classes in case they turn in 5 study halls and say this is what my parents said is fine. So we need to see your signature as well. Please make sure that that is on there before they turn it into their advisor. You can also use this. This will be more of a factor if your son is older, but to make sure on this sheet it also tells you exactly what the graduation requirements are in each department. So this can also be a way of making sure that whatever is being filled out is in line with that. Again, if you have questions about that, you can approach me or your son's advisor. It's really only if they're making quite unusual course selections that will be a factor. But occasionally it might be, so please reach out to ask questions about that if you have any concerns. Key deadlines. So these are the ones the boys have been told these deadlines as well. The first and perhaps the most important one is 2 weeks from yesterday, Monday, January 23rd. Students will turn in both of these sheets to their advisors. And the advisors will kind of double check again that what they've signed up for is what they've been recommended for, and also that what they're signing up for is in line with graduation requirements as well. So both of these sheets need to be turned in on the 23rd. A week week after that, students will essentially get a receipt, a printout saying these are the courses that have been entered into Scholar by your advisor for next year. Is this correct? There's a line for them to sign, there's a line for you to sign, so that again both can confirm, yes, these are the courses we were expecting, or potentially even within that week, maybe there's been a change part about a particular class and you can still make that change then. This is basically just confirming that what has been entered is what you were expecting to be entered. And we want to be as precise as we can about that. There are 850 or so students. There are always a handful of cases where there's a data entry issue. We want to make sure we catch that as early as we can. And then by the end of that week, we ask for that receipt essentially to be returned to the advisor, and that's the regular selection process is then kind of concluded. So it does happen pretty quickly. There's only a few kind of key steps, but they do come in quick succession to each other. Regular selection process in quotation marks there for a couple of reasons. Obviously, if we discover after that there is still an error and it just got missed, we will fix it, so that a change can still be made then. It could also be the case, and this actually is fairly frequent, boys who are currently in a regular class who are interested in moving up into an honours or AP class, their teacher may say, well, I think you're on track, but it's kind of it's a borderline call based on your grades so far. What that teacher will typically do is write on the front of the recommendation sheet next to the subject, review at the end of the year for honours or AP. And that would mean, of course, that right now they would not be enrolled in honours or AP, but there's another kind of window at the end of the semester when you review all those situations. And it is no disadvantage, it makes no long-term difference to be added to an honours class in May compared to in February. They're not capped in such a way that you're at a disadvantage. It's purely a case of saying, if a teacher isn't yet sure, it's not unusual to say, let's see how things pan out in the second semester and make a decision then. Again, as I also mentioned in the email, most people going through this for the first time are parents of current 8th graders, rising 9th graders. It can also be helpful and reassuring perhaps to know there aren't too many choices you're having to make the first time through the process as a parent of a rising 9th grader. Most of the classes are pretty set. This is a typical 9th grade schedule. Certainly every 9th grader will take English 1 and biology and Latin 2. Almost all of them will take geometry. There's a small group who might be in algebra 2 because they've already been in geometry in the 8th grade. But there the question is not going to be so much which subject do I take as do I take regular or honours. That's going to be the main question for those first 4 subjects. Then you do have a couple of choices as rising 9th graders. You do need to choose a 5th course, and there's 3 options you have. It could be a modern language course, it could be civics, which is a history course, or it could be a visual and performing arts course, and the department chairs will talk through what the options are there. And again, you might consider adding a 6th class. And once more, I would say the consideration there is there a definite reason? Is it a class they are particularly passionate about? Does this help them free up choices later? Is there a definite reason for doing so? And are they doing academically well in general, that they will handle the extra class and the loss of the study hall? Again, those are considerations we can talk through individually or with their advisors. So that's just to give you a sense of what the typical features the first time you're going through the process, typical classes you would have. I'm now going to turn it over to our respective department chairs, who are going in alphabetical order of department title rather than any other sort of ranking. We are going to open with our newly minted chair of the English department, Gracie Bassett.
Good evening, glad to be with you all. As Dr. Boyd said, my name is Gracie Bassett, and I am, on my better days, the chair of the English department here at teaching in the junior school. Our tracks, so to speak, in the English department are fairly straightforward. Each year you have a choice between English 1 or English 1 regs, English 2 honors, English 2, English 2 honors, English 3, English 3 honors, or English 4, which starts out as a study of tragedy and in second semester turns into a topical seminar, or AP. The requirement in the English department for qualification is a 92% year-end average. So when Dr. Boyd mentioned flagging a student who doesn't quite qualify to a revisiting at the end, that might happen if at the end of semester 1, your student's looking at a 90, 91 average, would like to be reconsidered in May. We will register him for English 1 honors, English 1 regulars, for example, and then revisit that in May. It's also not a done deal if he doesn't qualify for honors his freshman year, that he can't qualify for honors his sophomore year. So we could say end with a 90% year-end average at the end of English 8, take regular English 1 as a freshman, then make a 92 in English 1 regs and qualify for English 2 honors after that. It is unusual for a student to move up after that designation, but the sophomore year, it's not impossible. We usually do encourage 2 to 3 years of honors in order to qualify for AP English. That's it, general overview. I'll be around afterwards should you have any questions.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Gallicki. I'm the chair of the Foreign Languages Department. I teach Spanish in the upper school. As you can see, our course offerings are on the screen here. The requirements to graduate from MBA is the following. Students need to have either 2 years of Latin and 2 years of modern language, or 3 years of Latin. Those are the basic requirements for graduation. All 8th graders take Latin 1, and so if you're a rising 9th grader, the question is, should you start a modern language in the 9th grade or not? And the answer is it depends. It depends on whether or not the student is passionate about learning a modern language. We teach these languages, Chinese, French, German, Spanish, and how well he is doing in Latin. If he's enjoying Latin, is he performing well in Latin? If he wants to continue in Latin and postpone the modern language until his sophomore year. If he's really excited about starting a modern language his freshman year, he can start that year. A couple considerations is, as you can see, we go through the AP level in all of our languages we offer here. The difference is for Chinese, French, and German, to get to the AP level, typically it's a 4-year program. It is possible to get to the AP in 3 years, but typically for Chinese, French, and German, a 4-year program is required to get to the AP level and be successful there. In Spanish, a lot of students who are successful in Spanish early on can get to AP in their 3rd year of language study, and that's why we are able to offer 2 APs for Spanish, AP Language, and AP Literature. A main difference between the modern language and the classics is the modern language program that we have at MBA is full immersion. That means we focus on proficiency. The minute they cross the threshold into the classroom, it's in the target language at all times. And so we are therefore more interested in the student's ability to interpret and communicate in the language instead of their ability to simply know how to conjugate verbs. Yes, grammar is important, but as I said last year in the past, and never in any of my travels did anyone stop me in the street and request me to see if I could conjugate the verb from stop and imperfect subjunctive. That didn't happen. But, when I speak in the target language, I continue to make mistakes, but as long as the idea comes across, then I've accomplished the task. And so that's really our focus there, whereas Latin is really more precision-based, and so it depends on the nature of the student. Another thing for modern languages, because we're proficiency-based, students are expected to speak in the language. They'll be completely surrounded by the language, which allows us to get them to a high degree of proficiency fairly quickly. But not all students may be comfortable with that. Maybe not all students want to make these strange sounds. Maybe they feel more comfortable, being quiet and just or reading a text and translating directly from one language into English. In that case, probably Latin is a better course for that student. If a student who is unsure about whether or not he wants to take a modern language his freshman year, there are 2 things he can do. He can either just not sign up for a modern language right now, just continue with Latin, or he can mark undecided on his course registration sheet. This is something new we started this year. This means that the student is interested in taking a modern language, but he's not sure what modern language to take. This is also true for a student if he's excited about taking a language, but he doesn't know whether to take German, French, Spanish, or Chinese. He can mark undecided, and what we will do is we will look at that student a little more carefully, and we'll make a recommendation for a modern language for that student. It might be the student might be better off in a class that has a smaller size, or with a particular teacher that might be able to help him. We will make that recommendation, and then the student can always change that recommendation later on if he chooses to do so. Another important consideration to remember is when you're picking modern languages is a student should pick the language that interests him the most. You should not pick a language based on a perceived, that one language is quote unquote easier than another language. No one language is easier than another. It's sort of like saying becoming a professional baseball player is easier than becoming a professional football player. You have to work at both, and you have to put yourself out there to become successful. So one of the recommendations I always make to students, if they say, well, I don't know which language to take or which one's more important, I always tell them, say, if you could travel to any country, what country would you travel to? What country would it be? Would you want to travel to Italy? Would you want to travel to China, or a Chinese-speaking country, Taiwan as well? Would you like to travel to France, or Germany, or Austria, or Switzerland, or one of the Spanish-speaking countries? And that kind of helps them figure out maybe which language might interest them the most. Once again, my name is Daniel Galiki. If you have any other questions regarding the languages program, I'll be here afterwards to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Oh, it is over. Oh, you there it is. Let's see. Sorry, you could, as you all can tell, I'm the most senior department here. My name is Clay Bailey, and we have color-coded things for everybody, and what that reflects are the 3 requirements for graduation, the pre-high school requirements. And they fall into one much broader category, so I'll start with that one, the civic social studies category. And this is where more decisions, where students and in consultation with parents and advisors and so forth, with teachers, have the most options to consider. And the option for those of you who are parents with rising 9th graders, the option is, as Dr. Boyd mentioned, is civics. You know, so that obviously fulfills the civic social studies requirement. It's the only one called civics, and none of the other ones are called social studies. So this is where it gets a little more fluid, the courses that can fulfill this requirement include civics, AP U.S. government, which, and by the way, I should say civics is really just offered to 9th graders. All of the other ones that I'm going to mention are senior classes or junior-senior classes. Okay, so that first requirement will be fulfilled on the front end or the back end, essentially, is one way to put it. The options for fulfilling that requirement also include, and I'm sorry, I should have listed them here, I thought I had, but those options include, as I said, AP government, which is typically a senior class, but also some juniors taking from time to time, AP economics, and both of those actually are 2 AP courses, but they, and all this is in the book as well, so I probably won't into too much detail. But the AP Econ or Micro Macro is what I'm saying, so there are actually 2 AP exams, that's something to worry about later on. And then it's AP U.S. Government, AP Comparative Government. Other options that aren't as obvious include a somewhat interdisciplinary course called Senior Seminar, which has, will continue to be focused on the 1920s and the 1960s. The 1920s including the Harlem Renaissance, and with Dr. Fuller over there who actually teaches that course, so he is a multidisciplinary kind of guy. And then we're also trying a pilot program or participating in a pilot for a new AP called African American Studies. It is actually in the process of being developed this year with just a few schools as guinea pigs. This coming year, they're going to offer it to a larger, or have a larger number of schools involved. So they need to follow it forward. And then also, if you're students who are very much involved in the visual performing arts, particularly those who are involved in painting, visual arts, there is the option of fulfilling that requirement with AP Art History, which is, could be taken by 10th, that's the one that could really be taken in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. So that's probably more than you want to know about or need to know about the civics social studies requirement. Then the other requirements are pretty much self-explanatory. U.S. history is either it's taken in 10th grade in conjunction with American Lit in their English class, and the options are simply AP or non-AP for U.S. history. And it's 10th grade, like I said. And then for 11th grade, Modern Euro in the World, AP Modern Euro or AP World can be taken to fulfill that world history requirement. And so, yeah, there are many good options. Pretty simple and straightforward, but if you have questions, and one of the questions you may have is, should my son, if he wants to take AP US History, does he absolutely have to sign up for civics? The answer is, well, actually, kind of, but no. And so there's some ambiguity there, and the ambiguity refers to that we have the flexibility for most, as Dr. Boyd mentioned, and as Senior Kaliki also mentioned, we want students, including the history department, want students to have the option of starting that second, or the modern foreign language in 9th grade. And many students who choose to do that are very good students. And so if your son is considering, oh, do I have to take civics? I'm afraid I won't qualify for AP US History sophomore year. So that's where the answer is, well, no, you don't have to take civics. So if that student then goes on to do quite well his freshman year, and he's probably taken another honors class or two, and he's taken modern foreign language and Latin, and he does very good. He might be a violinist, so he's in choir, and I'm sorry, in chamber choir, or what am I saying? Orchestra, thanks. I'm the old guy, so anyhow, that's sorry, I forgot which. We were just talking about taking. Yes, thank you. Anyway, that's a senior seminar is really good as well. And it can also fulfill that requirement. And so, oh, no, I know what I was talking about. Okay, so other ways to qualify for AP if you've taken the 2 foreign languages, sorry. If you're taking, okay, so if you're taking the 2 foreign languages, and you do really well, and that was the other. Okay, so sorry, I got a little caught up in all the permutations there at the end. But next y'all are going to hear from Mr. Mike Davidson, who is chair of the math department, and I want to also say, please reach out to me, Clay Bailey, if you have questions, and I'll stick around after, but also if you come up with questions as you want through. So thank you very much. Sorry for the confusion.
Hi, I'm Mike Davidson. I'm the chair of the math department. And what I have on board is the math track for about 90% of students who come from MBA, which would be, I know a lot of you are parents of 8th graders, but probably most of you are now parents of a son who's taking Algebra 1, these are regular honors. Next year, most of your sons will take geometry, and then Algebra 2. One change this year is that for decades, the class that most juniors took in math was called College Algebra and Trigonometry. We're changing the name to pre-calculus for a couple reasons. I supported it for years. Our textbook's actually called pre-calculus, so it was a move I supported. It's a preparation class for calculus, so pre-calculus makes a lot of sense as a course name. And for the first time next year, the College Board is offering AP pre-calculus. So next year we are offering what we're calling pre-calculus honors and regular pre-calculus. All AP classes at MBA, if you take the AP class, you have to take the AP exam. This is kind of a trial year for us, where if the student's taking honors pre-calculus next year and would like to take the AP exam, they can, but since it's an honors pre-calculus class next year, they don't have to. If the feedback from students is that they're having success in the AP exam, we may shift and make it an AP pre-calculus class. Our main hesitation right now in going all on AP pre-calculus in the first year is we really still want to focus on preparing students for calculus in their senior year. We spend the entire fourth quarter on introductory material in calculus. It's led to really good results in our AP scores in calculus, and selected colleges won't give credit for AP pre-calculus, so we're really kind of still focused more on AP calculus as our end goal as a department. However, if students who are opting to take the AP pre-calculus exam are having a lot of success, we're getting 4s and 5s, we may just shift it to an AP pre-calculus class in the future, and everyone will take the AP in the class. But for next year, we're changing the name to pre-calculus. It's not yet AP pre-calculus, at least for next year, it'll be honors pre-calculus and regular pre-calculus. In the senior year is usually when the most decisions are made, because after pre-calculus, they can take the non-AP calculus statistics class, which is 1 semester of calculus in the first semester, and then 1 semester of statistics in the second semester. They can take AP calculus, either AP or BC. They can take AP statistics, and in addition, usually during the junior and senior year, that's the most common time to double up on math if your son's really interested in math, either with one of our 2 AP computer science classes. There's AP Computer Science A, which is a very demanding Java-based coding class, and there's AP Computer Science Principles, which is still an AP level computer science class, which is not as demanding as AP Computer Science A. In addition, although statistics can be taken by itself by seniors, they might go from pre-calculus to taking just AP Stat in the senior year, it's also a common class to double up with. Kids who are very interested in math oftentimes take AP Statistics as a second math class on this track. Now, a couple notes on the bottom left. You'll see that there's an asterisk next to Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Pre-Calculus. That's because those are the 4 required classes. You have to get 4 math credits, and if your sons have been here since the 7th grade and are taking Algebra 1, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Pre-Calculus fulfills that requirement. However, unless there's a really good reason, they should still take math their senior year. I'm aware of, this is my 14th year at MBA, I can think of one student we have recommended not taking math in the senior year. So even though that requirement is in that, unless there's a really good reason not to do it, you should plan on taking math in the senior year also. Pre-algebra was not listed simply because it's what most students took in the 7th grade, so if you're a parent of 7th grader here, it's probably what your son's in, but kind of looking forward, pre-algebra won't be a factor for you. And there are a handful of students, sometimes it's as many as 10, sometimes there are 0, sometimes there's 2 or 3, but students who are a year ahead. This year there's about, I think there's 5 students currently in 8th grade who are kind of on that year ahead track. And if they stay on that year ahead track, they may finish their senior year with multivariable calculus. Because it's uncommon, in some years, no students even get to multivariable calculus. I'm not putting it on the track that's kind of covering the 90% plus of students. But if your son is a year ahead, you may be doing in the 9th grade Algebra 2 and 11th grade pre-calculus in the junior year AP calculus BC and multivariable in the senior year. So again, I'm focusing on the majority of you. If your son is in that kind of 10% special case, please talk to me if you have questions about alternate tracks your son might be on. But the majority of students would be on this forecast. We have the rule of 85 and 92. It used to be the rule of 80. We kind of talked to the department and amended it to 85 this year. 85 is where we look for honors students and AP students to stay at the honors AP level. So if your son is in honors geometry and like to continue on to honors algebra 2, we're typically looking for an 85 from that student to stay at the honors level for the next year. If your son's in regular level math and is interested in going into honors in the future year, typically a 92 is where the cutoff is. If your son has a 92 in regular algebra 1, we consider talking about moving them up to honors double geometry in the next year. Algebra 2 placement gets a little trickier just in terms of if your son takes regular geometry and they're interested in moving up to honors algebra 2, we consider the performance both in algebra 1 and geometry. Geometry is the most recent class they've taken in math. Algebra 1 is much more similar to algebra 2 than geometry is. So it's the rare class where kind of 2 years performances are weighed as we look at placement in algebra 2. As I mentioned before, that senior placement it's a little more complicated, where before that it's basically is it honors or regular, and that's the main idea. If your son is on the regular track, the most common senior class would be that non-AP calculus and statistics class. If he's on the honors track, the most popular course for students on the honors track is AP calculus AB. But if you have questions about BC or statistics or computer science, I'm more than happy to deal with those questions too. Again, my name is Mike Davidson. If you get a chance to talk to me, great, that's great. If not, if you have more questions, just shoot me an email.
Hello, my name is Travis Barclay. I'm the chair of the science department. I teach physics here at MBA. Kind of like the English department, the first couple of years in the science department is pretty straightforward. Your son in 9th grade will take biology, whether that's regular or honors. We can talk a little bit more about that later, but it's regular honors biology. They have to take that as a required class. The next year as a sophomore, they're going to be able to take chemistry, once again, at the regular level or an honors level course. The junior year is where it kind of starts to deviate away from just a straight regular honors course. We actually offer 2 AP physics classes. Physics is a requirement to graduate from MBA, so all students will be taking physics their junior year. They can take the regular level physics. AP Physics 1 is the first semester of a college level algebra-based physics course. That does satisfy the requirement for the physics here at MBA. That is kind of the honors track right there. So if your son is along the honors track, you can take AP Physics 1. AP Physics C is the calculus-based version of that course. And then that is a lot more in depth. It's pretty challenging. You do have to be in honors chemistry in order to qualify to take AP Physics C as a junior. You do not have to be in honors chemistry in order to take AP Physics 1 as a junior. You can come from regular chemistry. And if you see at the bottom right there, kind of like the math department, we have an 85 and a 92 thing as well. So if your son happens to be in regular biology and happens to have a 92 or better and wants to move up to an honors level course, he can do that in his sophomore year and take honors chemistry. But if he is interested in being possibly an engineer, we suggest taking Physics C as a junior. Well, in order to do that, they need to make sure they're in honors chemistry as a sophomore. So they need to make sure that they're in honors chemistry as a sophomore. However, you can still make that AP level, AP Physics 1, as a junior coming from regular chemistry. Okay? And then in the senior year, that's where it kind of opens up a little bit in terms of lots of things we offer. We have AP Biology, AP Chemistry. I have several students that will take regular physics in their junior year and love physics, and so then they want to take AP Physics as a senior. Whether that's AP Physics 1 or AP Physics C, I can talk with them about that. We also offer environmental science, and then Physics 2 is the same level as Physics 1. It's the same in terms of algebra-based, and it's college level, but it's like the continuation of Physics 1. So Physics 1 would be like the first semester of college level physics, algebra-based. Physics 2 would be that second semester. So in terms of the difficulty of material, it's the same level, it's just different topics. You then would cover things like fluids, optics, waves, things like that. You get into like electricity and magnetism in that course, whereas in Physics 1, the first semester of the college level physics would be mostly mechanics. And then we also offer a non-AP class, human anatomy and physiology. And like I said, if your son is currently in, let's say you have a son in 8th grade right now, is currently in honors earth science, and is doing really well, the natural progression would move into honors biology. If your son is in regular earth science and is crushing it and gets above that 92, then we can then consider moving him up to honors biology. If he's unsure because he's moving into high school with some other things that he's going to try, doing honors biology is not necessarily a bad thing, because we can ultimately move him up in honors chemistry in the sophomore year, which would then put him on the projection of possibly taking AP Physics C as a junior. Kind of like the math department, some students will double up in their junior year and take some of these courses concurrently with a physics class. That's a possibility. Not very common, but can happen. And then some students will double up as well their senior year. Senior level science is not required, but once again, kind of like Mr. Davis said, it is encouraged. I'm Travis Barkley again. I'll be up in the front if you guys have any questions. Thank you.
An online article I posted on Facebook over winter break said research shows that attending art exhibits, concerts, and theater prolongs your life. So let me just start by saying to you, the proud parents of budding artists, you look marvelous. Great. More importantly, for your sons, the curriculum in the visual and performing arts is structured to nurture young men as artists so that they are prepared for further artistic study in college, if they so choose, and certainly to hone their creative skills, helping them to problem solve and collaborate effectively, no matter what their field is that they choose to pursue. I am Cal Fuller. I'm the Department Chair of Visual and Performing Arts and a teacher in both theater and history. And I have some quick guidelines. I hope I'm going to stick to my script very quickly because I have 3 different areas to describe and they're all slightly different. And hopefully it will provide some clarity about registering for these 3 different areas of artistic study. First, the visual arts on the far right. Studio theater is the first level and a prerequisite for other courses in the arts sequence. It is strongly recommended, you've heard that term a lot this evening, that young artists begin their study in the visual arts with the 9th grade when possible. Is one of your options, as Dr. Boyd described, especially if they're considering continuing in the visual arts to the AP level as upperclassmen, either in studio or in art history. Next, in theater. Theater arts is the first level course and is the recommended prerequisite for studio theater, although not always required. I have found in the last 2 years, all of my theater arts students have been freshmen. That's not a required. You could be a freshman, sophomore, or junior, but it seems to work most often for freshmen to take theater arts. Studio theater is the advanced course for seniors and occasionally a special situation for a junior who's ready to write and direct plays and has that as their passion. Finally, in music, the Big Red Chorus is the first level of high school course and a prerequisite for all the other choirs. So rising freshmen interested in singing will sign up for this course. Auditions for upper level choirs will happen in the next few weeks before your sons officially register. So they'll know what they get signed up for. So they should look for when those auditions are taking place. We're talking to those individual teachers. The high school bands and the chamber orchestra require instructor approval and an audition. Again, those auditions will take place in the coming weeks, prior to registration. Finally, AP Art History and AP Music Theory are open to sophomores, juniors, and seniors with approval of the instructor. Art History can be taken for art or history credit. That's been mentioned before. We know that navigating registration for your son can be challenging, and we're here to help. I can answer theater questions easily, and most of the other areas more generally, and know who to tell you to ask, or who I can ask myself to make sure I get the detailed answer for you. So we look forward to helping your young artists in the classroom, in the studios, and rehearsals next year. Thank you. Be glad to talk to you afterwards if you have questions.
So, thank you, Dr. Fuller, and to all the department chairs. I know there's a lot of information about different options and classes and courses to take in. We have been recording this evening's session. We will share that as well afterwards. But for now, again, thank you all for being here. We're going to stick around here at the front. If you have either general questions about the process or specific departments or a particular situation that you're considering with your son, please come up and ask us. And again, if you think of a question the moment you leave the room and the lights are off and everyone's gone, just please know we'll be happy to talk or find a chance to meet. Thank you.